What's poppin', everybody? Welcome in. This is the show where my co-host of Destination Chill, Scott Connor, y'all know who he is, at Charles Chill FFB on X, and we are about to grade the entire rookie class from the 2024 season. Fantasy season is over. Week 17 is in the books. If you all remember, after the 2024 NFL Draft, Scott and I did a show where we reviewed and talked about every single offensive player that is fantasy relevant. Here on the new channel, we thought, what better way to kick off the brand new year in 2025 by taking a look at the 2024 rookies. So, Scott, we're not going to play around. We're going to get right into it and start to grade this rookie class. Our criteria, we're going to keep it very simple. Scott, they're a star. You believe this is going to be a dynasty star. They've checked the boxes. Good enough. Not going to say a star, but good enough to move forward into next year. We need some more time. Wait and see. Or X, you don't want any part of them. You are totally and completely out. So we are going to go through the whole thing. Let's get right to it, Scott. Take us at the top. Everybody on the screen, talk about the quarterbacks, and let's grade them, baby.
All right, so we'll start. Caleb Williams was the first pick. Ray, I think for me, it's clearly it's tough to say that he checked the boxes, but I think if you're talking a evaluation of how everybody else is going to feel about him, it feels like just looking at social media, just the masses talking about Caleb, that he's the last one to blame in the situation, meaning it's blaming everything else but him, the coaching, the OC, the offensive line, the scheme, all of that. And I think I'd probably put him in.
Yeah, give him your. Don't put what I did. I think he's.
I would put him in. He didn't do enough, but I'm going to bump him up to he just checks the boxes, because I think all of those things that are negatives for him are going to be changed. The narrative's going to be, all right, it's all on him to take the next step, but I don't think he's going to be looked at as a failure. He still put up pretty good numbers. Yep. It isn't like he was completely awful from a fantasy perspective. So I'll say check the boxes, but obviously we want more from a guy that you spent that price on.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's checked the box. I'm not going to give him a different grade. You saw the talent. Even the throw that was called back last week to Rome Odunze, rolling out left, crossbody. OC change is pending. Head coach is pending. I think he's checked enough boxes to feel like you've got a viable dynasty asset moving forward. Jayden Daniels, 5. Number 2 off the board, went to the Washington Commanders. Scott, my grade for him, he's a star. Like he didn't just check boxes. He's already there. He's a dynasty star. He's a fantasy star. Anything different about Jayden Daniels?
No, he's a top 5 QB scoring-wise as a rookie. He's a top 5 asset in Dynasty. If you have him, it was a home run. You have not just a great player, but you also have an asset that you can do a lot with. So he's a smash hit in every capacity.
Agreed. Drake May, where are you grading him? What do you think? Is he a star yet? There are a lot of people proclaiming him as a star right now. Or do you think Drake May checks the boxes? Or do we need more time on Drake May?
I don't think we need more time. I think there's already been kind of a cult that's formed around him, very similar to Caleb, but I think he's seen as more positive than Caleb because the expectations were lower. I think he checks the boxes. Nobody's saying he's a bust. He's not going to make it. The Patriots are going to ruin him. But I do think you need to see a little bit more for him to get into that home run stat. But I think he's if you give Caleb a check, you got to give Drake May a check.
All right, who we got next up, Scott?
Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he follows as much as people have kind of clowned on him for not being as good as some of the other guys in the class, you can't look at his numbers and go, that's a bust for a rookie. It's a bust for a first-round pick. It's a bust for a wide receiver 4 overall in the sport before he even steps on the field. So I think he's a check the boxes because, again, he's still an asset that you got a lot of ability to do stuff with. But again, probably not somebody I'm saying for sure, give him another year. And
right.
Let's just say this before we get into a bunch more grades, Ray. A check the box can either be they did kind of what we expected, but they're probably not going to do more, or it's hard for me to expect them to get to the Super. Like, there's nothing about Marv's rookie year that says just wait till next year and he's going 100 for 1350.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's nothing to say he just gets better, but you can't say he was a bust. It's just the expectations throw people off.
And that's what it is, right? We're not saying he's a bust. We're not saying he's great. He he checked enough boxes to feel like at least you don't have a dead dynasty asset on your roster. Like you lost money. You may have lost 20 cents on that dollar, but you're still okay going in to next season with Marv. He's got a lot to improve upon. I agree with you that he checked the boxes, and I think we all agree that Jayden Daniels is a star. So let's move up the draft board some more. We are going to skip the Joe Alts of the world, and here we are, and we've got some more players on the board. Malik Nabers, Michael Penix, Rome Odunze Scott. Let's just get this one out of the way quickly. Malik Nabers is a star. We know that. I don't think we've got to spend a ton of time talking about that. Where you want to take him next year, we'll have a lot of time to debate ADP over the summer and where you're taking him versus other players, but he is a star. Michael Penix Jr. and Rome Odunze, how would you just generally assess, pretty much a game of Michael Penix, a game of Michael Penix and Rome Odunze. I think he's had a really good season as well, but I want you to grade these two.
Well, I think if you're going on the spirit of how we set this up, you need to see more from Michael Penix. But
yes, you do.
The one thing that we did see enough from is he's guaranteed been promised the job going forward. There were a lot of people, Ray, that said he ain't going to even see the field before next year. So The fact that we got a couple games and that Cousins will not be there, he will be the starter, they will start building the offense around him. To me, I think he does check the box. Given the asset that you went into with, he maintained that. Now, does it mean that he's as good as Caleb or Drake May? No. But I think he checked. If you said you drafted him, you're not upset with the outcome that you got from the start of last year to today, right? You have a locked-in starter and a guy that didn't go out there and just completely shit the bed. So I think he checked the box, and to be determined. We need to see more, but I'll give him the check for now.
I'm going to give him the time. I'm going to give him – I need to see a little more. Like, it looked good versus Washington, okay? And there were times where it didn't look that good. I think the big thing for me is I'm not going to overreact either way. I just need more time because he has not played with the starters for the entirety of the season. He did not get starter reps until they decided to bench Kirk Cousins. I agree with you that you don't feel like you lost anything, but I can't put him in the same category as Drake May, who I saw multiple games, or even Caleb Williams and all the down that has been Caleb. I've seen Michael Penix play NFL football for 7 quarters, and there were times against the Commanders where I was like, it doesn't look that good. I mean, it looks more, his arm looks liver than Kirk Cousins, but I still feel good about Penix. I just want to see more before I give him that checks the box. I feel rock solid about him next year. I think you've got a good asset, but I need to see a little bit more. Rome Odunze, he's checked the boxes for me. I don't think he's a star yet, but he's done enough amidst an awful situation and a bunch of wide receivers to make me feel very confident in him moving forward in 2025.
Yeah, it's hard for me to give Caleb the check, but then take it from Rome. You know what I mean? Now, I will say, Ray, wide receiver 61, given his expectations, is not as good as you would expect. I think it pushes him. Here's what it does. I'm looking at KTC. He's wide receiver 18 still. Yet, if you would put these same numbers for rookies that were not named Rome Odunze, you would have been like, I don't know about that rookie season. Remember last offseason how much flack people gave JSN for not smashing?
Oh, yeah.
And JSN was 10, 20% better than Rome was. So, I think that's probably the best case scenario. I'm good with the check, though, because I do think because he's wide receiver 18, again, a lot of the blame will not go on him. It'll go on everything else, and I think his assets still
You want more time. You don't want to give him the check.
I think if you're going to give him the check, you actually don't want more time because next year he's going to be more costly because people are going to say, oh, there's no way Keenan Allen can run it back, even if he's back with the team in general. If I want more time on Odunze, then I should probably be moving him now at the price that he's at. So I'm good giving him the check. Just, definitely below par, even for a guy that had a crowded receiver room. Still, what he did was not. We're going to go through some other guys, and we're going to go, they were just as good as Rome Odunze, and the market's not going to like them as much.
All right. Well, let's keep it moving. And we've got J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix and Brock Bowers up next. So, Scott, I'm actually going to take the easy road, and I'm going to grade Brock Bowers. Can I just grade Brock Bowers and give him a star? Because he is a superstar of epic proportions. Brock Bowers is a star. We're not going to talk a lot about that. Bo Nix, Scott. Fantasy football.
You want to go JJ or Bo?
Nope. Bo Nix, and we're talking fantasy football. We're not talking about NFL Super Bowl caliber winning stuff. We're talking dynasty fantasy football. Bo Nix.
I mean, you can't give him a superstar because he's not there, but I'll give him a check the box, I think, pretty easily. And he's probably closer to the superstar level given how he scores points than even Caleb or May is. And that might be a hot take, but I don't think any of the three turning into a superstar or a top 6, top 8 quarterback is out of the question. But I think he's in the conversation with those guys and probably showed more than they did in terms of getting there. So I think all three are similar odds to get there. What can you say about Bo, though? I mean, he proved everybody wrong. He was the best rookie quarterback production-wise other than Daniels, and it really wasn't close.
Can I give him a double plus? Can we make it? Can we kind of tweak it a little bit?
Give him that extra plus because he started he started further back in the race than the others. You know,
he started way back in the race. Maybe we can maybe even do this, Scott. Look, watch this, Scott. Watch what we're about to do for Bo next. You see, Brock Bowers has got that star. We're just gonna kind of star. We're just gonna because we're talking scoring points, right? Like, isn't that what we're talking about? Scoring points? Can we? I can't even move the damn thing. It's so small. But little star for Bo Nix. We could do that for him, right? Little star. JJ McCarthy. Time. Or check. Or does he check? Or does he?
I'm gonna go a hot take for you here, Ray. I
wow.
think if you're willing to make the bet that Darnold comes back,
okay,
you have a limited window to get completely out on JJ McCarthy at the price of he is the future Viking starter because. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with JJ, the prospect. We never saw anything. We saw that one preseason game where he looked okay. But how do you think Dynasty gamers are going to behave if they give Darnold a 3-year extension? All of a sudden, that McCarthy becomes you don't have any flexibility, right? You now have taken a huge loss, and your bet has to be I'll wait him out for 2 more years, which you know is a big loss, which makes me say – I'm just putting it out there that I could get behind the let's just sell him today for you're going to eat a little what you paid, right? You ain't getting a 106 for him. You're going to have to accept a 26 first or something like that. But give him the X because I think if that's a strategy that you want to do and you're betting on Darnold, I don't want McCarthy, right? It's that you always say it. If they re-sign Darnold and then you see, McCarthy's going to get traded to the Giants and he's going to start there, whatever it is. When that happens, guess what I'll do, Ray? Buy him. Because he's not going to be any more expensive than he was when he was with the Vikings. He's still an unproven commodity.
And to clear this up, this has nothing to do with your thought about his arm talent, his rushing upside. It has nothing to do with that. It's a byproduct of he didn't play. I'm with you. I'm not buying into a half of the first preseason game. It looked great, but come on, man. Like, and this idea that they could just swap out Darnold and then McCarthy's going to do the exact same thing, I think that is out over our skis. This is, from a dynasty standpoint, if they re-sign him, this will hurt McCarthy's value. And if they don't, Scott, and they start the season with McCarthy and he does not look like Sam Darnold looked to start, I guarantee you people will start to panic real quick when it comes to him. Man, we should have just kept Darnold. It was better with him. Whoop-de-whoop. I don't think this is as hot of a take as people might think. McCarthy, we got to see more, baby. We've got to see. Honestly, we didn't see anything. So how the hell could we say he checks a box or we need more time? Like, just grading what he did this year, we didn't see anything. And the quarterback that replaced him was incredible. So I agree with you. I'm not going to add anything else there, and we're not going to discuss Brock Bowers. I'll just ask you quickly, is he going to be a first-round startup pick next year?
Bowers, yeah. Okay. Especially in certain premiums. Yeah, even in non-premiums, I think somebody's going to get to the point and they go, man, do I really want to draft the QB 8 or the wide receiver 5? And it's like, I'll just take Brock Bowers instead. So, yeah, I can see it.
All right, BTJ, can we quickly move through this?
Yep, get that, go copy that star from Nabers and just stick it on BTJ, and we'll move on. They're almost interchangeable at this point. Because the people probably want to hear this from you. You have to pick. You can't trade. You got to pick one of the two, Ray. Right now, you don't know Malik Nabers' offensive coordinator, coach, or quarterback situation. You probably know at least the QB with Brian Thomas. You have to pick between the two. What are you doing? ADV aside.
I would still take Nabers. I would still take Nabers, and I am Brian Thomas Truther 101. I would still take Malik Nabers. I think he's got a little bit of that extra, and I just see the target shares just, it's ridiculous, you know. Jacksonville, Brian Thomas is awesome. He's a star. If you're asking me the question, I would still take Nabers. If I've got 10 of them, I would take 6 Nabers and 4 BTJs. How about that? I know you said I couldn't do that, but I would still take Nabers.
People need to hear that type of like data behind your decision to really understand where you're coming from. Do you think it's Nabers? Does he have a little bit, like he still has the yak and he still has the big play potential, but does he also maybe have in the right situation, he could also be the guy that is catching 10 a game just because he gets a little, does he get some easier stuff that Thomas does not?
I can't go touchdowns because I think BTJ is just a threat to score a touchdown. Yep. I can't go big play because BTJ is just as a threat to. I feel like if shit hit the fan and both of them had a bad game, I can see Nabers getting 7 for 55, like just fed with targets and being able to just volume his way. 10 catches, 62 yards. And you're like, good Lord, it didn't do anything, but he got targeted 15 times. I
he had a few of those games.
Right.
He had a few of those where, just all volume.
Just targets. Because when Kirk is back, when Evan Ingram is back, and I know people don't love Christian Kirk, they're going to pull something. They're going to command some opportunity. I just think that Nabers, it's like Nabers and Wan'Dale Robinson. That's it. Now, you add more players, that's different, but Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders are just going to throw the shit out of the ball to Malik Nabers. So I'm with you. BTJ is a star. Let's move down the board and round out with, I think this is such an interesting, I wish we can get all 3 of them on the screen at the same time, but this is an interesting cluster and range of receiver for a variety of reasons. All 3 started out slow. You got 2 at the bottom that didn't really do much early, and 1 at the top, and Xavier Worthy, who I was very high on after the draft. And I don't know who the primary will be next year in Kansas City, but talk about Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, who we saw an amazing game from last night. I think his Trinity score was in the 8s. And overall Trinity on the season, I think I was a little shocked at where he was at. So talk about Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette. Let's grade them. What is Xavier Worthy to you? Is he a fantasy star now, or is he a check plus, checkbox plus?
I mean, if you'd asked me this 2 months ago, I mean, he had 5 games in his first 10 that he was like sub 5 points, like not even involved.
It would have been a red X.
Yeah, would have been an X. And then second half of the season, I mean, he's been like a top 15 receiver. So I think you have to give him, and I know we don't just look at fantasy points, but look at his Trinity and look at his year totals. He checks the boxes as a guy where easily you could go, okay, that's a top 15 receiver going forward. Like if you like a guy that you've gotten production from like a Waddle or a Devontae Smith, that type over their career, I think Worthy's probably right in line to be that. Does he ever become more than that? I don't know, but I think you got to definitely say he checks the boxes. He really came on, even with Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce there, Ray. He still carved out a chunk better than any of those guys, which is saying something. So I think he proved it over the last month or so where, he was probably the number 1 or number 2 option, which means he's going to be at least a wide receiver 3 or better. So I got to give the check.
All right, checkbox. I'm with you on Xavier Worthy. Let's go to the other Xavier, Legette. Can I take the start of this one, man? I
This is a fascinating one. I want to hear where you're at on both of these guys, honestly, because talk about time doing.
I'm Red
Interesting.
Xing Xavier Legette. He got opportunity, and long story short, I just don't think he's that guy, right? I think he's a good complementary piece. I think he's better than Jonathan Mingo. I do not believe he's Deebo Samuel, but it is clear to me. And when they're throwing the ball and force feeding a 52-year-old Adam Thielen, and he looks far and away the best option, and it's not close, there were too many inconsistencies from Legette. And this isn't to say that he can't get better next year, but I'll sell that hope. I think I'm out. And Carolina, they're already talking about bringing in a Higgins, drafting a McMillan. For me, I'm going to look at that Trinity score. I understand the draft capital, but the film, just the tape was not good for me. I think he can improve, but as a fantasy asset, he's the guy that I'm trying to throw into deals for somebody else to buy. I'm hoping the fish takes that hook. It's not even a live worm on the hook. It's one of the cheap plastic ones, and I'm praying that a fish bites it. I'm good on Legette, Scott.
Is he kind of what QJ was after last year, but maybe just seen in a little bit more of a favorable light?
Yeah, not as negative as QJ.
Do you expect him to be clearly better than Quentin Johnston was in year 2? He had a decent season. You know what I mean?
No, I don't. I don't.
And his value will still hold a little bit more because he was a first-round pick, and people still think he's got a shot. He doesn't. How do I say this? He doesn't have the QJ stink, right?
No, he doesn't have the QJ stink.
So I think you can still move him if you have him. So with that, I agree with you. I'd be out because I think his value is going to be higher than what I expect from him.
Prisoner of the moment, but last night Ricky Pearsall looked great. He was big. The routes were good. There was great timing with Brock Purdy. He's athletic. He's fast. He's got the draft capital. I don't know where his Trinity is on the season, but I'm just watching this last night, and here's what my thought is. Ayuk comes back. He's dealing with the ACL. I'm not going to have high expectations for Ayuk off the rip. Deebo looks like he needs to move to fullback. I'm good on that. They drafted him in round 1, and he looked like he could be a really good pass catcher. Am I going to go out here and say he's a top 10 dynasty receiver, a top 20 guy? No, but I'm willing to bet on that talent and what I saw last night, and he was somebody that we like coming out of Florida. I'm going to give Ricky Pearsall a time. I need some more time with him, but he's one that I want to I don't want to pump up too much, Scott. I hope a lot of people watch this, but I'm going to try to acquire quite a bit of Pearsall this offseason. I'm going to make one of those bets, but I need a little more time, but I'm willing to buy and let that time let that hourglass tick out on me if it does. But I like Pearsall.
Yeah, this is a really tough one because the positives are you saw 2 games from him where he looked like the best receiver on the field. Then you saw a bunch of other games where you go, is he even playing?
Is he playing?
And he was playing. He was there. But, what happened with all those other games where he didn't even get a target? He had one target, didn't even score a point. Now, here's what I would say, Ray. I think after the last game that's going to stick in everybody's mind where he was the best receiver on the field, I think we're going to get to the offseason, and he's going to get pumped up into the range of higher than the likes of the Chris Godwins of the world. People are going to go, give me the younger guy. And if you're telling me I can get another 2 years of a healthy Chris Godwin, I'm not ever putting that type of production on Ricky Pearsall. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So I think this is one where if I can trade him for a better vet and get a third or something like that, give me a Mike Evans, give me a McLaurin, and I'll just take the bonus because I think he's probably good, but I think he's more of is it fair to say he's like Jerry Jeudy, Khalil Shakir, good? He's never going to be a stud. So what am I moving away from, especially when you hear in March that Ayuk won't be back for the start of the season, Deebo gets cut.
Right.
Dude, it's going to be Pearsall, wide receiver 1. He's the next Ayuk. He may crack the top 24 in value, and I think it's a sell. So I'm with you.
Okay. All right. There it is. Pearsall and Legette. that is round one, Scott Connor. That is round one. We wrapped up round one, and we'll move a little quicker as we go through these and maybe some rapid fire stuff. So let's clear the board, and then let's move this up and get to round two, and then get into round two of these grades. So here we go, draft tracker, and let's go to round two and see what we have. And I kind of forgot. So we got Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, right off at the top. Scott, start with Ladd. Did he check boxes, or is Ladd a star? Is he a legitimate? Is he Cooper Kupp? I mean, can he be that in this offense, or do you think he's more Keenan Allen, where there's going to be volume, he's going to have those big games, but he's always going to be viewed as like one of those guys outside of that elite star range? And I think there's going to be some white receiver bias here too when it comes to the slot guy. And that's why I used Cooper Kupp to put him in an elite range and not just he's Danny Amendola or Wes Welker, a lot of the common stuff that you hear. Where would you grade Ladd on this season? Because he's been a top 3 rookie wideout.
Easy. I think you got to put him as a superstar, and here's the reason. He scored 15 points a game. He's been consistent almost all the season. Trinity scores great. You can't still argue for guys like Drake London, Garrett Wilson, but then not have Ladd in the elite range, because he still hasn't probably hit the peak in terms of like his market either. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that like him. And so he doesn't just have production that none of those guys ever had as rookies, but he also has a lot of likability tied to a good quarterback. I think if you have him, you didn't maybe get superstar production, but you have a superstar asset, at least for this offseason. So I think it's clear to just give him the star. Move on.
Agreed. Keon.
I mean, I think he's got to be a tick higher than Leggett and Pearsall. So I'll give him the check the boxes. I think he did. He held his own on a team that never had a primary receiver, but a team that also had other good pass catchers. Like he did. Didn't a lot of people expect that if you told me they were going to trade for Amari Cooper midseason, that would have probably told me that Keon Coleman wasn't doing anything, right?
Yep.
They trade for Amari, Kincaid's there, Shakir's there, and Keon still held his own, was a top 40 receiver-ish. I think he checks the boxes. I think he's a good asset with but like Pearsall, I'm not just going to say, well, wait till Amari leaves and he's just going to be a stud.
No. Check box doesn't mean that we're prepared. Like, they've done enough that you've got, again, a live, fluid, flexible, desirable dynasty asset moving into the offseason, not something like what we're going to talk about right here that does not feel great. So Jayden Polk, and we're not just here to bury him, but he did not. This is an X, right?
He didn't do anything, right?
He didn't do anything, right? He's an X, right? There's no. Do you want to see more? Let me ask that. Maybe that's a better way to frame it. Would you like to see him in a featured role next year with Drake May, or are you like, go find somebody else? Go draft somebody else. Go find somebody else. I'm good on Jayden Polk. And I believe he's got one of the lowest usage scores in this rookie class.
Yeah, I think obviously you want to see more, but that's mostly because you're stuck with a player that, I mean, I was in a couple championships, right, where I still had Jayden Polk on my roster. And I'm sitting here going like, will you give me Zacchaeus for him? You know what I mean? No. Like he's not even an asset. If you have him, he's an asset because you don't have the humility to cut him yet. So obviously you have to see more because there's no other choice. But yeah, he's an X.
Jonathan Brooks. Man, think about this. The Panthers, in their 2 top 50 picks, they drafted Xavier Leggett and Jonathan Brooks with top 50 picks. And for very different reasons, neither of them contributed to their team in significant, meaningful ways. I hate to do this, man. I personally hate to do this, but I'm good on Brooks, man. It's unfortunate. Injuries are a part of the game. We don't wish for this. We were all excited to see him. I'm good. There's no reason why in Dynasty Fantasy Football I would want to carry him right now. Like, there isn't. I don't want him. I'm good. A running back that has shredded his knee twice, and they've re-signed the primary. Who's better? I'm Red X and Jonathan Brooks, and it's unfortunate, but injuries are part of the game. I'm not going to be the analyst that says go buy low on Jonathan Brooks this offseason. You will hear 1,000 And you'll see it, Scott, as soon as he posts that first workout video in March. I'm back, ready, better than ever. Buy low on Brooks. You can do that, but I will pass.
Yeah, I mean, Hubbard played well, then he got extended, then Brooks came back and tore the same ACL late in the season. I mean, it's literally the worst case scenario. You'd have been better off if you'd have sat out the whole year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you got to give him an X, unfortunately.
Oh, man, now we're getting into the fun, everyone's sleeper. Adonai Mitchell, pick 52, and Ben Sinnott at pick 53. How are we grading these two?
I mean, I think you got to give Adonai Mitchell the X, and here's the reason. A, he didn't have a great year. B, the guy he was supposed to bury, Alec Pierce, had a way better year than him. C, I can't endorse any Colts pass catcher with Richardson at quarterback, right? And that's what they're probably going to do. So, I mean, it feels like he is buried in all three different facets of he didn't have a great rookie year. The guy he was supposed to be clearly better than, because he's not better than Michael Pittman and he's not better than Josh Downs.
No.
So the guy he was supposed to nuke had a breakout season, right? If A.D. Mitchell had Alec Pierce's stats, we would be saying he checked the box with room to grow. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
plus.
I think he's an X because there's not much I can do with him other than go, is there anyone else that still likes the hopium and will give me
the answer
something
is yes.
based on last year's price? If the
case, answer to that question is yes. Yes.
Then you could say I want to see more and I want more time to move him. But for me, it's an X because my plan is to just capitalize on that hopium now before we get into next year. We realize it's no better.
I'm A-Rich. I stood, planted the flag on the Richardson Hill, and my tombstone was also enshrined up there. I am up 6 feet under. You can't endorse any pass catcher with him at quarterback. Not right now. He's not a good enough passer to even if I like Adonai Mitchell, which, Scott, I do. I do think he's big and fast and athletic, and we've seen him make a couple of crazy catches, but I can't do it, man. I Red X, Adonai Mitchell, and we'll see how things shake out in the offseason. Ben Sinnott, rookie tight end, didn't do jack shit. As Zach Ertz, old man Ertz, 90 years old, eating his lunch week in and week out. Hell, John Bates is on the field getting catches. What are you doing with everyone's favorite tight end, the Senator, Ben Sinnott?
Ugh.
And I know that you are one of the people who really rely on RAS score with the tight ends and how you can't bury tight ends after 1 year or even two in certain cases, especially if they're athletic. But again, using the same sort of conversation, he wasn't on the field, man, like really much at all. I don't think he did much of anything this year, Scott. So do you want more time with him, or are you just Red X and Ben Sinnott? With the knowledge that this 25 tight end class is stacked, completely loaded. What are you doing with Sinnott?
I mean, the problem is, like you said, he had 12 targets all year. So we're not talking about a guy that didn't play or was injured. I mean, he played 15 games,
yes.
Didn't run a lot of routes, had 12 targets the whole year. Now, I agree that tight ends are not – first of all, I don't think in Dynasty we have a great idea of how tight ends work, how teams use them, all that kind of stuff. We just see TE and we expect them all to be Brock Bowers or George Kittle. You know, it's not how it works.
Okay.
But here's the thing, right? I'm looking right now. He is still – on KTC, he is still ahead of the following players. Now, it doesn't mean you could trade him for these guys, but for me, he's got to be an X for this reason. Would you take him over Hunter Henry?
No.
Mike Gesicki?
No.
Dalton Schultz?
No.
Theo Johnson? I mean, you saw more from Theo Johnson, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a maybe, but no.
There's a bunch of guys that are not sexy tight ends, but Benson is in the conversation with. He's back to back with Dallas Goedert, the same value.
Oh, come on, man.
You know, no, but he's got to be A.D. Mitchell, right? He's got to be the X because he didn't do anything. But the plan would be sell on the year 2 hopium because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get burned by an asset that just kills me.
Correct, and that is round 2, Scott. We're going to move on to round 3, and then once we get out of day 2, we'll kind of rapid fire and speed these up a little bit. And at the top of this thing, Malachi Corley, Trey Benson.
I think Corley is basically Jalen Polk. You didn't see much at all. So, like, he's an X, but he's also an X that has no value. So you kind of have to see more. But, yeah, he's an X. And I'll say this, right? I don't blame Corley as much because I do think there's probably some shit behind the scenes with the Jets and why he didn't get. I mean, you heard some of the stuff in the offseason about how he wasn't ready. Rodgers didn't trust him. Like, does this mean on another team he wouldn't have seen the field? I don't know, but there's nothing I can really say that's positive. So
I put time next to it, but I don't want people to think that I'm out here buying Malachi Corley. I will be very curious if they do move on from Garrett Wilson, which I hope they don't, or Adams and Rodgers go. There's a new OC in. They draft. I'll be watching Corley. He might be one where an underdog, round 17, you look up and he's the Jamison Crowder for them. But overall, it's a red X. Not a lot of his fault, but I can't. Yeah, red X maybe. I'm actually taking the time off. It's not his fault, but there's nothing to feel great about moving into the offseason. Trey Benson.
Well, let me hit on one thing real quick because there's two players that come to mind with these receivers that we didn't see much from. You'd say Marvin Mims and Alec Pierce had solid seasons, right?
Yeah.
But that's probably the best case scenario for one of these rookie receivers that doesn't do anything. So if you hear the names Alec Pierce and Marvin Mims and you're not blown away,
yeah, that's a good point.
Don't be scared to trade A.D. Mitchell. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you're probably not getting much better than that. So if those names don't wow you, then every other receiver we talk about, for the most part, you should go, if someone else wants them, I'll trade them. I can move them.
Trey Benson.
I think he's I got to see more, but I don't think what he was drafted to be has changed. I think he's probably the strong part of a committee in Arizona at some point. They just didn't get opportunity this year. Is that his fault? Not necessarily. The guy ahead of him didn't get injured. So if you expected him to just push James Conner aside, then you're probably going, man, that's almost a red X. But I never expected that. I kind of look at it as he's on the 53. He's going to have a really good shot at having a role. When that comes, you hope he's a good player. The only thing I want to see more from is we didn't really get to see that he was a good player, right? We don't know that yet.
We did not. Jermaine Burton, Tip Ryman, and Blake Corum. So we're going to start with Tip Ryman. Yeah, and we're going to move on. Red X there. Let's go Blake Corum.
I think he outproduced Ben
Did
Sinnott,
he outproduce Sinnott? Let's go your boy, Jermaine Burton. Your boy, Jermaine Burton. What's Burton getting, Scott?
He's in the Polk, Mitchell, Corley. I mean, no, he's an X.
Yeah.
Like, he just I'm, as a fan, I'm hoping he becomes a rotational piece on the offense. Let
me ask you this. You get an opportunity right now, and I know you don't like one-for-one deals. Would you rather have Yoshi Voss or Jermaine Burton going into 25?
I mean, Yoshi Voss.
Okay.
Easy.
Okay. All right. Blake Corum. He was supposed to take Kyron Williams' job. Kyron Williams was not going to receive 80% of the work. Blake Corum was beloved, especially when he went out there and ran fast in the 40-yard dash. It's probably a good running back, but here's what I'll say. I think Blake Corum, for me, from what I saw, and I'm thinking the dynasty value, Scott, I might shock you here. I think he checked the box, okay? I think Blake Corum checked the box, and that box that he needed to check was not overtake Kyron Williams, because I never thought that was going to be in the range of outcome. When they give him the ball, he looks fine. He looks fine to me when they give him the ball. They work him on the field. He didn't produce for you on fantasy, but here's the thing. People still love him. People are still, for whatever reason, skeptical on Kyron going into next year. And I think his value is still what it is. He's a backup running back in a good situation that needs a lot to happen, but he's still an asset that I can use in Dynasty. Point scoring potential, he didn't do shit for you. I mean, he busted from where you drafted him. Like, you picked him because you thought it would be a committee, and he did not do that. But he's still holding. Like, people still want Blake Corum. You put him in to a trade package, and you add him to your Garrett Wilson, you add him to your Devontae Smith, you can upgrade using him as a throw-in piece. I might shock you, but I'm going to say he checked the boxes from my expectation for him.
Yeah, I mean, you know who he kind of reminds me of? Zach Charbonnet as a rookie.
Yes.
People would have said, didn't push out aside the guy that was already there. But with these running backs that get drafted, and just wait till this class, there's going to be another half a dozen or more that fall into Blake Corum's situation.
Yep.
All they have to do is prove that they've earned the role you projected him to be in terms of, like, he is the backup. He would have been the starter if Kyren Williams would have got injured.
Yep.
It just didn't happen. So you can't ding him and go, well, the starter stayed healthy and played more snaps than almost any other running back, and that's an indictment on Blake Corum for not just pushing him aside. But I think he maintained. So, yeah, if you liked what you saw from him, I'm curious, who would you take, Benson or Corum, given that I think the market will be more soured on James Conner getting out of the way quicker than Blake Corum. I think a lot of people have flipped on Kyren. Like, man, he's going to be a thorn in our side for at least another year. Whereas, you know, Conner ended the season injured. I think a lot more people will be Conner and Benson will be closer together than Corum and Kyren will in drafts. Who would you take if you had to pick? Yes, Corum or Benson?
Probably Benson. Because
you can see that angle, right, where the
Yeah.
people think the floor falls out faster on Conner, which it might, but it might not. So
Correct.
Interesting.
Correct.
Interesting.
All right. Let's pause real quick, Scott, because I still see us moving, but on this screen it looks frozen. So, all right, Scott, let's move down the board some more, and we've got some more doozies here. Another Michigan wide receiver, Roman Wilson. Didn't see anything out of Roman Wilson this year, Scott, and I have consistently mocked receivers to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the recent mocks that I'm doing, and I think they do. They can't go into next year with freaking Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, and Mike Williams. And different topic about George Pickens for another day, but we saw nothing from Roman Wilson. We also didn't see anything from Marshawn Lloyd. He is a red X. I'm just going to ask, is the sentiment good enough on Marshawn Lloyd that you would put an hourglass? You need more? You want to wait and see, or are you just red X and Marshawn Lloyd?
I think it's hard to red X on Marshawn Lloyd if you're gonna check Blake Corum and Trey Benson, only because I think that he wasn't healthy, right? When he came back, he had that. I think it was he had another issue that popped up where they had to basically, like, he was always injured. So you can't really say he's not going to be what you thought he was going to be. But again, it's the failed thinking of the running back that's there is going to get pushed by this rookie, which seems to, I mean, we've gone through a lot of players where that hasn't worked. So I don't think I can.
You can't red X him? I put an hourglass up for you. Time.
I just think he has to be viewed closer to Benson and Corum because, and here's the only concerning thing.
Those two played, man.
I get that. What I'm saying is, and here's the other thing. They had two backup running backs there in Green Bay that could be a little bit of a thorn in the side. Like Emmanuel Wilson wasn't horrible. So to think that Marshawn Lloyd will just relegate him to the practice squad is probably too much to say Marshawn Lloyd will do. But I just think if you're looking at how these guys are situated, I get the red X if you can sell somebody. Like, here's what I'd want to do with Marshawn Lloyd. Sell him with something else to get somebody that I know is playing. But I don't think you can say, because he was injured all year, that he's not potentially the next man up. And that doesn't mean the starter. He gets a couple starts here and there for the next couple years. Like, that's pretty much what he is. So I'm good with where you have him. He didn't play. So that's fair.
Jalen McMillan, who's been on a hot streak since the last about month of the season. I think he's checked boxes, Scott. For me, I'm not putting him in a star category by any stretch of the imagination. But I do believe that he has checked enough boxes to feel really good about having this asset on your roster going into the offseason. Anything different?
Now I'm just looking at the other receivers. I mean, could you trade A.D. Mitchell for Jalen McMillan?
Maybe a week and a half ago you could have. I don't know about
maybe
now.
A week and a half ago, yeah.
Okay,
then here's an easier one that I think people want to know. For you, McMillan or Leggett?
Easy.
Okay.
Easy.
McMillan or Pearsall?
Jalen McMillan.
Keon.
McMillan.
So the fact that you even debated and took him over those two tells me that he's probably too low, which makes me give you agreeance with the check, because you hit on a third-round receiver that you're talking in the same light as two guys that were first-round picks. Or right
I'm
there.
giving him a
So,
plus. If
I can't argue.
If they move on from Godwin, whether he turns into Godwin or not is not my argument. People will believe that he will be. And
100%.
I think you might be able to get a damn first for him if things break right. So I'm going to give him a plus. Not a star, but he is a plus prospect, a player to have. Last one in this round for day 3, Luke McCaffrey.
I mean, he showed more than Corley, Roman Wilson, Jermaine Burton, but I mean, I'm not too encouraged by some of the guys that outproduced him, right? I mean, just straight waiver fodder guys, you know what I mean? Came in and were just like, didn't you hope that he would have been the Noah Brown or Zacchaeus? You know what I mean? He could have done that, and he just.
I'm gonna be honest with you, man. There was no point in time where this was one of the guys that I was in on. I truly think that last name pumped him up a lot higher than he needed to be, being a McCaffrey. There was no world. And the fact that he can't get on the field over the Noah Browns, the Zacchaeuses, and do much of anything, he's a red Xer for me. I'm good on Luke McCaffrey. We'll see how he plays next year, but I'll pass on him. I'm putting him in that same category. Let's move on to round 4, Scott, and we'll go a little quicker here through round 4, see what we have. Right here at the top, JT Sanders and Troy Franklin. What are your thoughts about both of these guys?
I think JT showed enough. I think he's a check the box. He was a 4th-round pick, and he looks like he's probably got a shot to be a starter. Not a stud, but if you told me I look up and I have, I think it's a good comp for him is probably like a Cade Otton, where you look up and he's productive. You know what I mean? Like he's Cole Kmet, he's Cade Otton. Like, okay, I can get starting points out of him. So good there. Franklin,
if you want to fade tight end, he could be somebody that you take much later and you get 9 points and you're just like, I'll just take the 8 to 9 points that I'm getting from JT Sanders.
And he will be, because he's not on a team people love. Like he was injured a lot. So I think he won't go much higher than he did last year. And he showed something.
Agreed.
So
Troy Franklin.
Man, it's hard to not give him the X, but I guess because we saw it's that Saints game, right, where he looked like the best receiver. You know what I mean? That one game where you're like, damn, the Bo Nix Franklin connection is. I mean, people were paying seconds for him after that game, and then he didn't do anything the rest of the year. He's probably not even the best rookie receiver on his own team.
He might not be,
but
people like him.
There's a name, and here's what I think is going to help Franklin. Marvin Mims is going to help Franklin. The fact that he was literally where Franklin was last year, and then he turned out to be decent. People will go, year 2 of the Sean Payton receivers, they'll get good. So, yeah, I like to give him an X.
The reason why I give him some time is because I do think that he's not a piece that I'm out acquiring, but he would be a piece that if I had – once the steam year 2, you can see the narrative. The connection in year 2 is growing. He's more confident. But I want some Troy Franklin to sell. Give me some more time with that asset. I'm not going to, when I think Red X, I'm like, you can have him, Scott. Punt them off my team tomorrow. Franklin, you can have him, but I wouldn't be mad having him and holding him, having some more time with Troy Franklin on my roster. Theo Johnson and Javon Baker.
I think Theo Johnson you can put in the same boat as Jatavian Sanders. So I think he showed
check
enough.
Box.
He was decent. Yep, check the box. Yep. Javon Baker, I mean, he's Burton, he's Corley, he's Paul. Just
Javon, the best receiver.
Perpetuating that narrative that they still can't draft receivers, right? Like the 2 they drafted were just stone cold. I mean, Kayshon Boutte lapped both of them combined.
Both of them. Nasty work right there in New England. They need a receiver. Let's continue to move down the board.
Another one.
Tez Walker, I'm not even putting it's a red X, and we'll keep going. No with Tez Walker. Eric All.
I would have given Eric All almost a double check, but the dude tore his ACL again, man.
Tore his ACL.
Could he make it back? Yeah, if he does, I'll be moderately interested, but
I'm good.
Dude, it's one where I think the masses are still going to think he can make it back. And if I can sell him there's a lot of time. If I can sell him for a guy I think is going to be next year's Will Dissly type, Zach
AJ Barner. AJ Barner.
Give me somebody that can produce something. I'm bummed that he got injured because he looked great, but he did. No thanks.
Oh, look at that. Speak of the devil and they shall appear. Jalen Wright, AJ Barner, and Cade Stover. We've got to grade him. Jalen Wright, did he even play this year, Scott? There was a lot of hype.
He's Marshawn Lloyd. I think he barely checked the boxes. I'm going to give him we need to see more.
Okay.
But I think you could also say because here's the thing. The one thing we've seen about these types of backfields, whether it's Miami, San Fran, they don't wait around for these guys, Ray.
No.
They don't say, well, year 3, Jalen Wright will be the second part of the committee. I bet you Miami gets at least another guy in there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This is the team that drafts another running back and signs Elijah Mitchell and goes Jalen Wright, you got to earn your – no, seriously, you got to earn your job. He's not going to be handed
I agree.
the Raheem Mostert role. So, he's a nice player, but we didn't see enough. And also, Miami's running game this year was 32nd in the league. They went from the running game savant of the league to God, I don't want any of their running backs. So
AJ Barner,
you take him. You're the AJ Barner guy. You got to give him the check box, don't you think?
He checked the boxes for me. I'll just say, tight end is very difficult to kind of pick and figure out. But the one thing that I have been very firm on with a lot of backup tight ends, and I think we need to analyze it a little bit more, is when they get an opportunity to play early and they show that they're competent enough to keep on the field, the team normally doesn't pull them off. It's hard to replace that. And while Noah Fant is there, I can 1,000% see after next season that being a starting tight end. He's involved in the offense now. He scored a couple of touchdowns this year. The stats aren't eye-popping, but I'm watching his involvement in the game. He will be my Jake Ferguson, where I'm just going to have a shit ton of AJ Barner all offseason. I believe he'll have a role in this offense moving forward. I think he checks the boxes this year. Cade Stover, I know he played. I did a mock today, Scott. I was this close to giving Houston a tight end. That close to giving them an explosive tight end. They re-signed Brevin Jordan, who will be back, and they have Dalton Schultz, who's not great, but he's good. I'm giving him a red X, but it's not even that he's bad, but I don't see a pathway for Cade Stover personally. Where are you at?
I don't see a path. I hate to just say he's another Ohio State tight end, but Ray, there's literally been 5 Ohio State tight ends like this where you're they're going to have a role, and it seems like they always settle into just being a rotational second tight end on a team.
Yeah.
It sucks. He was Stroud's guy, right? That was supposed to be the guy that Stroud wanted, but like you said, they re-signed Jordan. You can't see opportunity for him in 1 year, which makes me say he's just an X.
Look at this cluster that we have of running backs. Bucky Irving, Will Shipley,
Superstar.
Ray
Superstar.
Davis, Isaac Guerrero. Bucky Irving, Scott, he's a superstar, correct? Superstar, correct?
I'll say this. I don't expect Bucky Irving's production to almost ever be better than it was this year. So to think he just gets better next year, I think is a little bit of a fallacy. But people love Bucky Irving, and they will say he's going to get better. So if you have him, you have a good producer, but you have a superstar asset for the next 6 months.
I have never heard a crowd cheer for a running back the way, and I don't know if you heard and were listening to the game. They are Bucky, but I've never, Scott, a rookie, they are cheering for him to get. I mean, they love him. This is, if we had to redo the 24 rookie draft today, I think there's a world where he goes ahead of Caleb Williams himself, Bucky Irving. I mean, I think if we redid it today in Superflex, it might go JD 5, Drake May, Brock Bowers, Malik Nabers, Bucky Irving, then Caleb Williams. I think people would take Bucky over Caleb. Just the sentiment that people have around C-Dub right now in that situation, he's a superstar of epic proportion. Will Shipley, Ray Davis, Isaac Guerrero.
All right, so I think Ray Davis and Isaac Guerrero check the box, exactly what you wanted them to be. They're probably viable backup running backs. I'm good with those. Will Shipley probably gets more of the Marshawn Lloyd and Jalen Wright, but I don't think Will Shipley was a failure. He just didn't play. So
Right.
how do you – he's still going to be a running – did you expect him to come in and take work from Saquon?
Hell no.
Did you expect him to push Kenneth Gainwell out of the way, who's been in that role for 3 years?
No.
So, is it indict? Can you definitively say Will Shipley sucks, Ray?
No, I don't know that. No.
Now you can probably say like Jalen Polk isn't very good. You know what I mean? Like that, a guy that had opportunity and did nothing with it. So I'll give him the Seymour time just because I think he fits. We could be talking Will Shipley next year. RB50, he's one of the top 10 running back backups that you want to have.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
There you go.
Yep. Jared Wiley and Sion Vaki.
Jared Wiley's Cade Stover, right? Like, he never
Yes,
played, really.
correct,
So, yeah,
correct.
he's an X.
And we'll move on. We don't have to talk
You don't
about
want to grade Sion Vaki, even though you couldn't get past Craig Reynolds?
We cannot do that. No.
Let me ask you this, Ray. With a backfield like Detroit, where it's basically set for another 2 years, do you ever have interest in grabbing the third running back in a situation like that? Like if they draft another guy behind Sion Vaki next year, and it's another like third, fourth, fifth round running back, is that just a guy you won't have? If they draft next year's Will Shipley in round 4, do you even bother because you have to?
No.
There is no immediate opportunity. You need an injury, and there's no other outcome. So do you even want to waste a spot?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. So if they draft a running back, if they draft my favorite running back, Woody Marks, I'm just going to be like, that sucks. Like, he's not going to play. You're not playing. You're not going to play unless injury happens, and then I can go pick you up or trade for you. Braylon Allen, he checked the box. He checked boxes. People love him. He's competent. He's a good running back. If something were to happen to Brees, he can play. Even if nothing happens to Brees, he might find a role with a new situation on the same team with Brees next year. He's checked boxes. Jacob Cowing, he's played.
It's another one of those. I mean, I'm looking
Red
at
X.
these receivers between
It's
Corley, Burton, Roman Wilson, Luke McCaffrey, Troy Franklin, Javon Baker, Tez Walker, Jacob Cowing. I mean, that is the entire third and fourth round. There's Jalen McMillan. That's basically it. All the other guys, they didn't. I mean, usually you see those guys even just become like rotational wide receiver 4s. You know what I mean? They're just straight zeros, almost all of these guys.
All right, let's quickly go through this. Anthony Gold out of Oregon State. I don't even know if he's registered to catch.
Let's say this. Going forward, I'm only going to say whether I'm interested in even rostering him for some ADV or sentiment reason. So Anthony Gold, no.
Okay. We'll go through Audric Estime. He's checked boxes.
I want to see more. But yeah, he checked box or see more. Yeah, I'm good with that.
He's fine. He's a plotting running back that might get some carries if they don't draft anybody else, okay? So, Spencer Rattler.
I will say Spencer Rattler checked the boxes. I think he is a viable
I'm putting that on the screen.
backup.
I'm putting that on the screen.
He is a viable backup for the next couple years, and I'll tell you what, if they run it back with Derek Carr, I'd bet Spencer Rattler gets some opportunity next year again, potentially. Okay. So I value those backup quarterbacks. I know not everybody does, but I think he's fine.
You do?
He got to play. He got those, whatever. He got the experience. He's had some reps. So there you go.
He does not look like a franchise quarterback, but he feels like somebody that with some more time might be able to be a spot starter for some weeks and score you some points. He runs around a little bit. Sidebar, I just want to know quickly, was Josh Newton any good for your Bengals?
I'm fine with him. Okay, I don't know if he's a starter, but he's one of those dudes they just had to play. So, yeah, he's good.
All right. Anaya Smith, come on. Any interest?
No.
Okay.
Exum, Jamari Thrash.
I thought about picking him up in some leagues.
Dude, I watch every Browns game because I'm subject to being in the area where every Browns game is on. He's the worst receiver on the team.
Okay, never mind.
Awful.
Right. Okay.
Awful.
Right.
And I rooted for the guy, but all he did was make mistakes. So, no.
Fair enough. All right, well, I won't pick him up. Rasheen Ali, Tyrone Tracy, Keelan Robinson. I'm going to go here for Tracy. I think that's a very good one. Ali showed juice on kick return team, but
I will not give Rasheen Ali an X because I think he is on the Ravens.
Okay.
But that's all he is. He's on the 53. The problem is if Keaton Mitchell comes back, I like him way better than Rasheen Ali. So it's hard to say there's any role other than he's.
Will you cut him at the end of the season, or would you keep him and say, I'll just hold him for a little bit longer and try to move him in some big package later? Or are you chopping him off your roster?
I would hold him if you're still rostering any of Javon Baker, Tez Walker, Jacob Cal, any of those. Okay. I would cut those receivers before him, put it that way, because at least he got on the field.
Ooh, Bub Means.
I mean, he did nothing, so it's hard to say he's not one of those other guys. But you know what? You got to cut him. If you're cutting Jamari Thrash, you're cutting Bub. Because I think Bub Means and Jamari Thrash, just given their situations, will be in a spot to play a role next year. But they just didn't do anything, so it's hard to do anything but Red X them.
Jordan Travis, come on, man. Red X for Jordan Travis. I'm asking the question. If they move on from Aaron Rodgers, will the new regime come in and give him any look at all?
That's a good point. If it was the same regime, I would say Jordan Travis was probably drafted to be potentially the backup, which makes me interested. If it is a new regime, the new regime may go, we don't like guys like Jordan Travis, and they just don't even want him. You know, so
Correct.
I'm good then. Good point.
Isaiah Davis.
I mean, he's the best. He is the best day 3 running back, I think, of all of them, besides Tyrone Tracy. So there you go.
He is.
Yeah. Give him a check.
Let's check the box. I was going to say, I don't think he's a Red Xer. I think he checked the boxes for what. I think he checked the boxes. Is he great? Is he a lead back? But you know who he reminds me of in a way? Tony Pollard's rookie year. No one even remembers it. It took him a couple of years to earn that backup role and then more opportunity. The problem is they have Breece and Braylon Allen, but if one of those guys were to be removed from the equation, they play him on third downs. Like, he's out there on the field on third down situations, and he's big as shit too. So I think there's a world where he could be a backup plus running back, Isaiah Davis. And that's everything from round 5, and we got it for the spirit of the show. We've got to go through the whole damn thing. So we're going to move on to round 6, Scott. And who do we have in here?
Get those X's ready, Ray.
Oh, man. Everyone's favorite, Kamani Vidal, Jaquan Jackson, and Malik Washington. Grade them.
Kamani Vidal, I will give Kamani Vidal the check, and here's why.
Really?
Here's why.
Wow.
There is a hive mind with Kamani Vidal. He did get on the field, and that is going to be a team that clears out every running back come free agency. So he's a check he's an asset that grew.
Okay.
But I have zero expectations. I still expect we start the season, and he is the RB3. But I think you have a window. So if you have him, I don't think you have a lost asset. You just need to play on the narrative that he's going to have a role next year. And it has nothing to do with his play. Nothing to do with his play. X.
And who else do we have up here? Malik Washington. I'm giving Malik a check, man. I'm giving him a check.
I'm fine with it.
I want some Malik Washington. I want a few Malik Washingtons next year. I'm giving him a check. I think we saw enough out of him where I don't need to see more. We know what he is, and he was a good prospect coming out. I'm giving him a check. Johnny Wilson, Jace McClellan, Casey Washington.
Did you even say those names? Just skip.
Jace, Casey, and Wilson skip. Tajon Palmer, don't even know who that is. Red X. Joe Milton, Tanner McClain.
Well, apparently Joe Milton might start week 18 for the Patriots. Just so we might actually seriously, they're thinking about starting Joe Milton. So we might get a Joe Milton
hopium
the
game.
The only appeal to Joe
game?
Milton was he does two things in a game where you go, if he ever got in there, he could score points. He's still an X. Tanner McLaughlin's only played like one game, so he's an X.
McLaughlin. Yeah, okay. And let's go down the board, see who else we have. Jawar Jordan, X.
Didn't even make the team. Nope. Dylan. Lobb.
Oh, yeah, that Dylan Lobb. Red X,
talked about him the other day. Like, dude.
You know what, man? Red X, but he is what he is. I think, Red X. Fantasy, we're talking fantasy, Red X. Jordan Whittington.
So he probably should be a Red X because literally he had opportunity and he couldn't get it over many other guys on his team. But there's still, I can't remember where I heard it stat, but there's still a window where Jordan Whittington actually had like a pocket of production that was not just like good, but like elite. So I do think I'll give him the benefit of the doubt I'll give him a C+ check only because he's on the Rams. They've developed guys like him before, and I do think there could be some narrative with Whittington because there are some people out there pumping him up as give it another year. So I think he's a good asset to have right now. He's Troy Franklin, but better.
I would give him a check, man. I think for where he was drafted, we're here in round 6, 7? Round 6, where he was drafted.
End of round 6.
And what he was doing, if the Rams let go of Atwell, somehow Kupp is gone, Tutu Atwell is gone, people will be like, oh, shit, there might be some opportunity for Whittington. And, what you do with him at that point, that's up to you. But I think he's checked the boxes for what we thought he would be. Ryan Flournoy, Devin Leary out of Kentucky. Your boy, Devin Leary, and my boy, Ryan Flournoy. X for Flournoy, and I didn't even, Leary, yeah.
He didn't even make it. Real quick on Flournoy. Is there any narrative on Flournoy given?
No, there isn't. No. And if there were going to be one, we needed to see it last week without CeeDee Lamb, and he didn't do anything at all. So there it is for Flournoy. So let's round this out. And we said we were going to go through every single offensive fantasy relevant player. Scott, I know when I told you that at the beginning, we were both kind of like, are we really going to go through everyone? And yeah, damn right we did, and we are. So let's finish up right here in round 7. And were there any? My boy, Brendan Rice. Red X.
That's the whole year. What can you say?
Red X. Jaheim Bell. It's a Red X. But would you pick him up at all?
I mean,
you kind of want to. You do a little bit. You kind of want to, but he didn't play at all. He's on the field, but they don't throw him anything.
The only negative I would have is they clearly threw the ball to Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry and never him. So I mean, I'd pick him up just because I could see the world where those guys are out of the way and people would pump him up out of thin air, But yeah, I'm good.
Vele. There he is, man. He's checked boxes. Seventh round pick.
Yeah.
I know you don't like. I know.
No. Here's the thing. You give him a check. He did way more than expected. He showed that he belonged on the field. But how do you navigate through a team that has Franklin, Mims, Vele, and Sutton, and guaranteed is going to draft a receiver?
Here's how you do it.
How do you navigate between those three guys after Sutton? What do you do?
Well, I think the thing is, it's the roles in which they play and they occupy in these offenses. And his role seems completely separate from Franklin and Mims. He's the third or fourth big-bodied option on the outside. When they don't throw it to Cortland Sutton, it's like, all right, we can get Vele involved. And they do. And we've seen Sean Payton have success with these kind of receivers. I mean, he's 30 goddamn years old as a rookie, okay? So he's experienced. How you navigate it is this, Scott. He's never going to be the one or the two in the offense, but he'll always, at least right now, he looks like he'll be involved. He's a package player. He's a package player that I will add in a best ball deal, and mainly best ball. Lineup, I don't know how many people are like, give me Vele, I'm plugging him in. But in best ball, he's a live asset. He's an asset on a team that has a quarterback that's thrown top 5 pass attempts in the league with Sean Payton. That's how I navigate him. He's a package player. That's what I'm going to start calling those guys. They're package players. They play, but those are guys you want to put in a package to move for something else. Can I move Vele and something else to go get Cortland Sutton? I would do that. Can I move, you know what I mean? What can I move with Vele to go get something else?
Wouldn't you rather, I mean, speaking best ball here, but we could say lineup, but let's just say best ball because I think it's easier or harder to kind of navigate these types of trades because people go, oh, best ball, give me every receiver. Isn't he also a guy you would package to get a running back that has a role? And then that you because here's what you can do in best ball. You can find some random Veles across the offseason and in the season on waivers. Like those types of guys pop out, whereas it's hard to find a role like a Gus Edwards type on waivers. Well, you know what I mean? Like,
can I move Vele and Tank Bigsby for J.K. Dobbins? Right? Can I package up some stuff like that to get a running back that I need? And I'm not saying do that now, but he's a package player. You'll never be able to move Vele ISO for something of value. So you got to put him in because people will see him and be like, all right, there's a role and Bo Nix throws the ball. Moving down the board, Taj Washington. It was kind of a battle between Washington versus Malik Washington, the other Washington, and Malik won out. So that's a red X for Taj. Michael Pratt, Green Bay, no thank you. Red X. Devin Culp, who didn't do shit all year. And then in week 17, Baker Mayfield, I think he threw almost had 2 touchdown catches in that game. Tight end is a weird position. They've got a bunch of them on this roster. Any interest in picking him up?
I think the biggest loser down the stretch, Ray, was probably Cade Otton because they had 2 other tight ends that literally could just play his role. You know what I mean? And so
I agree.
You kind of got to respect those other 2 tight ends they have, including Culp.
Are we going to give him can we give him a C, some more time?
He's not a guy I would just cut if I picked him up. I would hold him into the offseason. So there you go.
Agreed. All right. And let's go down the board and see what else we have.
That's it.
Cornelius Johnson. Red X. Red X. There it is, man. That is every single fantasy football viable player that was drafted. Were there any UDFAs that we missed that you could think of? Who did we miss that? Who do we miss?
The most famous cult hero UDFA that I think I've even thought about. What do you do with him? What do you do with Carson Steele? Because he lost his role entirely. But given how many guys they've had over the years that have that role, you dumping him?
I'm dumping him, fully prepared that he's on Kansas City for the next 5 years, and he's their new who was that fullback they had that one year, 42, Sherman? Remember him?
Yeah.
Mike Sherman back there. They're drafting a running back. They gave him an opportunity. He fumbled the ball. He's not really athletic. He served his purpose for that 1 week that you needed him. And other than that, when you're having Kareem Hunt run wheel routes and seam routes, that lets me know that Carson Steele is probably not very good. So that is the 24 class. Quick thoughts about this class overall. Jalen Coker. Check boxes. I think he's going to be a starting receiver or a role player for them next year in that offense. I do believe that. Jalen Coker, 100%.
Okay. That's all. There's a few others, guys that you may recognize the names that played a little bit. Mason Tipton played a little bit for the Saints, but then he got injured. But yeah, pretty much that's it.
Yep, that is it. Thoughts on the overall class, Scott? We went through every single pick, every single offensive pick, giving our recap. We did this right after the draft, going through these situations, and we're excited. Any quick takeaways before we get out of here?
I'll just say that I bet you if we go back and listen to that show that we did, and then all of the stuff we did pre-draft where we went through the mocks, the biggest range where I'm not going to say you whiffed because the expectation shouldn't have been that high. But a lot of the wasted picks from this class were those late seconds and third round picks where you took that Javon Baker and you took that Roman Wilson and Jermaine Burton and Malachi Corley and just said, all these guys need to do is be the wide receiver 3 on their team and they'll be usable. And the majority of them didn't even make it on the field, whether it was injured reserve or just they couldn't even get off special teams. And so think about that again, especially if you're in lineup leagues. If you're getting to that range of the draft, think about the analysis that we gave on guys like Estime, Isaiah Davis, Kamani Vidal, Isaac Guerrero. All those guys had to do is show that they could run for a couple games. And we said, hey, they got a shot to do it again next year. Whereas if you have Javon Baker, there is nothing you can do with them other than just cut them and say, I'm wiping my hands clean and freeing up the roster spot. So again, back to the principle of if you're going to take a player, you're probably better off just taking the running back you think could be an injury away from being injury away, because they have more survivability, I think, than a lot of those receivers. If you're wrong on the receiver like Tez Walker, it's just a wrap. The team's going to replace him, and he's not getting on the field.
What is your, and I know there are always exceptions to rules, but you've got a rule. If a receiver's outside the top 50, top 60,
it's really top 40, but, I think here's the thing. That is for them being like productive, flex-worthy receivers. That does not take into the account that there might be somebody that still likes Jermaine Burton or Roman Will. Like, it doesn't take into the account that because people chase receivers that have sexy profiles, it doesn't mean don't draft them. It's just don't draft them with the expectation that they're going to be productive. Draft them with the expectation that they are an asset that I'm playing the market with. So that is the exception. Like, if you're going to draft a 4th-round receiver, they better be a guy where I go, man, they're tied to Dak Prescott and they might be a starter. Then I can sell him versus, he's just going to be Dak Prescott's wide receiver too. They're two different arguments.
Correct. We appreciate y'all pulling up. Thank you for checking out this video, the first video on our new Dynasty and Fantasy Football channel. Make sure if you're checking out this for the very first time, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, comment below. Let Scott and I know what you think about our 2024 rookie grades. We've got a lot of dope content about to hit this channel very, very soon. From Scott, the Dynasty Theory crew, Dynasty Trades, sports betting. This is going to be all fantasy football all the time, from the highest level to the deepest dive strategy. We cannot thank y'all enough for all the support that you've given us throughout the 24 year. And we're just getting started. The 2025 class is here. And I promise you, with the success that we've had in Underdog Fantasy, the success that we've had during this fantasy football season, DD is the place to be. So use the link in the description to get 50% off of access to our community. Get over there, but I highly encourage you to join the highest tier, the GOAT tier or the Heisman tier, patreon.com/allgas or ddfantasyfootball.com. The best place to be this offseason and throughout the year to learn, to grow, and to talk ball. Thank you, Scott. Appreciate everybody tapping in. Hit that thumbs up button. We out. Peace.